Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. Hopefully you had good things happen to you because, you know, if you watched the Colts play, or if you watched Indiana play football, then good things did not happen to you. So hopefully you had other parts of your weekend that were good. Usually on Mondays, I open with the Colts, but I got to be honest. I'm sick of the Colts. There's really just no other way for me to put it. So trust me, I'm going to talk about them quite a bit today, but I do want to start with the Indiana Hoosiers. And look, they got trounced on Saturday. Absolutely torched by Ohio State, who might be the best team in the country. The game wasn't close. It started well. You know, Indiana comes out. They're on defense first. Force a really quick 3-and-out. My hopes go up a little bit. Like, oh, Indiana forcing a nice little 3-and-out right there. Let's see what they do on offense, though. Boom, 70 yards. Moving the football. 3 for 3 on third down on that drive. They go 7-0, and I'm like, all right, here we go. I'm excited. Maybe at that point during the game, you have Ohio State fans in your life, and you texted them with just like the 2 eyes emoji, like, hey, watch out now. You know, there was some hope in that moment when Indiana went up 7-0 halfway through the first quarter. And then all that hope evaporated very quickly because the Buckeyes went on a 38-8 run for the rest of the game, just absolutely outplaying Indiana in every phase of the game. Now, Indiana did some good things. Okay, it wasn't all bad, right? I thought that Indiana's front seven, the best part of this football team, I thought they were good. They held Quinshon Judkins to only 2.6 yards per carry, right? That's a guy who's going to play in the NFL. They held Travion Henderson in check for the most part. Aside from that 39-yard run, he only averaged 3.6 yards per carry on his other 8 rushing attempts. So the front seven for Indiana held up in a big way. The issue that Indiana ran into was the talent gap on the outside. Ohio State was significantly superior to Indiana on the outside. Indiana just didn't have the talent to match up with the Buckeyes out on the edge, right? Like they didn't like Isaiah Pons. Love that kid. Plays hard. He's like my size, which makes me like him even more. That dude can't guard Jeremiah Smith. Like, come on now. Like, that's not going to happen. And it's why Will Howard had one of his best days of the year. Okay, Will Howard started 14 of 14, finished 22 of 26. Indiana simply had no answer for the talent, the NFL talent that Ohio State has at wide receiver. Simply as that. It's as simple as that. On offense, Indiana's problem, I thought was pretty obvious. They couldn't pick up a blitz. If you watched that first drive where Indiana just worked the football down the field, Ohio State did not blitz. They rushed 4, dropped 7. That was primarily the defense that they ran. And Curtis Rourke had plenty of time, threw the ball on time, on target, had a lot of success, right? Like that's what the first drive was. I think that's why we all had, you know, some hope, right? I was like, oh, like Ohio State, they're not getting pressure with 4. Here we go. And then Ohio State was like, nah, I think we're just going to blitz the rest of the game. That's what they did. They blitzed the rest of the game, and Indiana just couldn't block Ohio State from there. Guys were missing assignments. Offensive linemen were being ran over, and that was the game. Curtis Rourke was sacked 5 times. It felt like a lot more than that. Okay, Ohio State got pressure in his face every passing down after that first drive. Okay, the reason why Indiana lost on Saturday is because Ohio State was simply more talented, and Indiana wasn't good enough on either side of the football on third and got to throw downs. Like if it was 3rd and 8 and Indiana had the ball, it's like, yeah, there's no way that they're going to convert this. If Ohio State had the ball and it was 3rd and 8 or more, or whatever, it's like, yeah, they're probably going to convert this. I think the best example of this is it's 3rd and 35. Indiana feels like they're in a great spot. Ohio State gets a 25-yard completion. You're like, oh, it's still 4th and 10. And then Ohio State was like, nah, we're going to go for it anyway. And on 4th and 10, they were able to convert. And when that happened, I was like, this game's over. If Indiana can't get a stop on a 4th and 10, then it's going to be a really long day. Okay, Indiana just wasn't good enough in obvious passing situations on either side of the ball. That is why Ohio State won. Even though Ohio State had a turnover in the red zone, even though Ohio State committed 8 penalties, it didn't matter. Ohio State was so much more talented than Indiana out on the edge that it just was insurmountable for Indiana. We already knew that, though, or we should have already known that. Despite the drubbing that Indiana suffered on Saturday, they still deserve a spot in the college football playoff. And it's not because Alabama lost. It's not because Ole Miss lost. It's not because Texas A&M lost. Okay, because that's what people are going to point to. It's like, oh, these 3 SEC teams lost. Indiana should be good. In theory, sure. But Indiana should also be in because they're legitimately one of the 12 best teams in the country. It's like, well, Jonathan, how can you say that? How can you have that opinion of Indiana? I was told that Indiana had to keep it like a 1-score game to prove that they belonged and all that kind of stuff. And Indiana just got beat by 23. What do you mean they deserve a spot in the playoff? They just got blown out by Ohio State. They aren't anywhere near as good as arguably the best team in the country. They aren't anywhere near as good as the betting favorite to win the national title. What do you mean they deserve a spot? The truth of the matter, when you look at college football, is that most of the teams in the country are not as good as the best team in the country. And you say, well, Jonathan, what does that even mean? Like, of course, like if they're the best team in the country, then of course no one else is as good as they are. Yeah, but it's to a point where teams get blown out. If you look at the history of college football, the 2, maybe 3 best teams in all of college football have a tendency to blow out even the 5th, 6th, and 7th best teams in college football. Okay, there's, in my opinion, 2, maybe 3 teams who could have gone on the road to Columbus and had a fighting chance to win that football game. That's Oregon, who beat Ohio State at home, Texas, who's probably the best team in the SEC, and Georgia, who, when they play their best, which isn't always, they feel impossible to beat. Any team outside of those 3 would have gotten the same treatment as Indiana got on Saturday. So, Jonathan, how do you know that? Because I looked at the history. Okay, let's take a look at the 30 college football playoff games that we've experienced with the top 4 teams in the country playing in every single one of them. The winners of every college football playoff game, they have outscored the losers 1,192 to 634. That's a point differential of 558. That's an average scoring margin of 18.6. So on average, through 30 college football playoff games between the 4 best teams in the country, whether it's 1 versus 4 or 2 versus 3, the average margin of victory is 18.6 points. That is a 3-possession game on average at a neutral site. We just saw Indiana on the road lose by 3 possessions, 23 points. So what we just witnessed in Columbus is what a normal college football playoff semifinal game looks like, a 3-possession game. That is what the majority of these games look like. And those are between the top 4 teams in the country. Most of these college football playoff games are not close. They look like what we saw in Columbus. When you go back and you look at the history of the college football playoff semifinals, only 9 of them, or just all the games, this includes the title games as well, only 9 of them have been decided by 1 possession. That's less than a third. Less than a third of the college football playoff games are decided by 8 points or less. 18 of the 30 college football playoff games that have ever been played have been decided by 3 possessions or more. That's over half of them. Over half of the games throughout the history of college football, or throughout the history of the college football playoff, looked like what we saw on Saturday. An absolute blowout where the team wins by 3 possessions or more. That is the reality of the sport. the two best teams in the country are heads and shoulders above the third and fourth best teams in the country. That is the reality of the sport. Okay, we have seen college football playoff games where teams get shut out, and it's the team ranked third or fourth. And it's not because they aren't the third or fourth best team in the country. It's usually just because the first and second best team in the country are just vastly superior to everybody else. Once again, this is the reality of college football. So even though Indiana got their doors blown off on Saturday, even though they lost by 23, they still undoubtedly deserve to be in the college football playoff. That game that we saw on Saturday looked like a normal 1 seed versus 4 seed college football playoff game. Like that is legitimately what it looked like. An absolute blowout. So, once again, even though Indiana got their doors blown off on Saturday, they undoubtedly deserve a spot in the college football playoff. If the gap between even the top 4 teams in the country in years past looked exactly like what we saw on Saturday between the Hoosiers and the Buckeyes. Okay? The best thing, though, that happened on Saturday was Alabama losing to Oklahoma, who's going to go 6-6, 7-5, maybe. Texas A&M losing to Auburn, who's not good at football. Ole Miss losing to Florida, who's gotten a lot better, by the way. I will say, like, give Florida some props. They've figured out a way to win some games. So Indiana should, not saying that they will, but they should wind up where they belong. Okay, the AP poll came out yesterday, and Indiana was ranked 10th, which is insane, by the way. Absolutely insane. They got dropped 5 spots. I'm sorry. Like, they've crushed everybody that they've played. Their one loss is on the road to Ohio State. How are they dropping 5 spots? How is a team like SMU, who I like SMU. That's a good football team. They shouldn't be ranked in front of Indiana. How is Notre Dame 10-1? Their one loss at home to Northern Illinois. How is that team ranked in front of Indiana, who's also 10-1, whose losses to Ohio State, the number 2 ranked team in the country? Just it doesn't make any sense, and it comes back to the issue that I've had with these rankings really the entire time. It's all name bias. Not all of it, but it feels like it is. Like if Penn State, Notre Dame, and Indiana were all held to the same standard, which they clearly aren't, Indiana would be ranked in front of both of them. Okay? Penn State barely beat Minnesota on Saturday. Like, come on. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, and their best win is now over 20th ranked Texas A&M. Like, how is Notre Dame, once again, how is Notre Dame and Penn State ranked in front of Indiana? How is Tennessee, who's got 2 losses, including one to Arkansas, who's going to go 6-6? Go Hogs, by the way. Name bias. It's an issue. How is Miami, who's 10-1, hasn't beaten anybody good, with a loss to Georgia Tech? Like, how is that team ranked in front of Indiana, who's also 10-1, an Indiana team who's dominated every inferior opponent that they've played, and then they had to go, and their one loss to Ohio State? Like how is Miami ranked in front of Indiana? None of these things make sense. They just don't, and it's frustrating, but that is sadly the reality of college football. It is a bunch of blowouts, and more importantly, it is a lot of name bias where they're just gonna, rank teams like Notre Dame 5th, even though they don't have a great win on the year, and they have probably the worst loss of any team vying for a college football playoff spot. More stuff on Indiana later. Got to talk about the Colts. Going to do some quarterback defense attorney. I'm already getting some, Anthony Richardson sucks stuff, which is just fundamentally wrong. It just is. Okay. Was Anthony Richardson great yesterday? No, he was not great. But was he the problem? I don't really think he was the problem either. Okay. I think that the problem is this Colts roster isn't very good. I would say That's the biggest problem that the Colts have. It's not Anthony Richardson. It's this roster as a whole. I'm going to get into that. The Colts getting just crushed by the Lions yesterday, 24-6. My thoughts on that game when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice day. Hopefully you're ready for Thanksgiving. Hopefully you're not working at all this week. Hopefully. That's my hope for you. Oh, man. Colts lose to the Lions yesterday, and that game didn't feel close. It's not really surprising. You know, they lose 24-6. They look terrible. So many things were just wrong with the Colts yesterday. Anthony Richardson wasn't good, right? You know, outside of a couple slant routes to Josh Downs. Every throw that Anthony Richardson seemed to make was down the field. This is a play calling thing. Like I thought Shane Steichen had finally figured it out against the Jets. Hey, mix it up. Short routes, intermediate routes, and deep routes, not just deep routes. Okay, 11 of Anthony Richardson's 28 passing attempts came less than 10 yards down the field. That means 17 of his pass attempts went further than 10 yards down the field. Like it can't look like that. It cannot look like that. Right? Like against the Jets, part of why the offense was much more crisp and just better, part of why it's the best offensive day the Colts had all year, was because the play calling was just better. Right? Easy completions for Anthony Richardson. Right? Like that was what Shane Steichen afforded to him against the Jets. And against the Lions, they went back to, you know what we're going to do? We're going to throw a bunch of deep balls over and over and over, and let's see what happens. Okay, of the 11 passes that Anthony Richardson attempted less than 10 yards down the field, he completed 7 of them. 7 for 11. That is a 64% completion percentage. On his throws further than 10 yards down the field, he was 4 of 17. That's not good. That's terrible. That's abysmal. It's horrendous. It was so bad. Once again, I thought that we figured this out, Shane. I thought that we figured out that you've got to give him easy throws. They didn't want to screen the whole game. They didn't throw very many slant routes or curls or anything of that nature. Everything was pushing the ball down the field. Okay, which I get it. Like when you go down big, like you have to start to push the ball down the field. But even early in the game, they didn't give him easy throws. And you have to. Like, you have to make things easy on your young quarterback. This is something we've talked about all year. And you especially have to do it when your offensive line can't block anybody. Anthony Richardson was pressured on 14 of his 30 dropbacks. That's 46%. Almost half of his dropbacks, he faced pressure. Look, it's hard for any quarterback in the NFL to find success when under pressure that often. It's even harder to find success when you're trying to throw the ball 15 yards down the field with pressure. It is incredibly difficult to do that. I mean, like the reason why the Colts lost on Sunday ultimately is because this Lions front dominated the Colts offensive line. And before the game even happened, it should have been apparent that this was going to be an issue. It's like, Jonathan, how do you know that? The game hadn't started yet. The Colts are starting 3 rookies on the offensive line. 1 undrafted, 1 drafted in the 3rd round. Look, most dominant offensive linemen, most of the best ones in the NFL, don't get drafted in the 3rd round, especially left tackles, because they're hard to find. Three rookies on the offensive line. 1 was a 4th round pick. The right guard was undrafted. The left tackle was taken in the 3rd round. It should have been obvious before the game even started that they had to get the ball out fast because this Colts offensive line wasn't going to hold up. They got pushed around all game. Right? And this should have been known before the game even started. Like the Colts should have come out and looked to get the ball out of Anthony Richardson's hands as quickly as possible. And they didn't. Okay? Like you have to get the ball out of Anthony Richardson's hands quickly when he's facing that much pressure. And that's not even just an Anthony Richardson thing. That goes for every quarterback. When your offensive line can't block, you got to get the ball out quicker. Okay? And also, I quickly want to address, because I think this is an offensive line issue as well. People are going to make a big deal out of the penalties, right? Shane Steichen will probably get blamed for them. But please look at the penalties. Okay, like they weren't. There was one false start. There weren't any illegal procedures. There were never 12 guys on the field. Nothing coaching related happened. When you look at the penalties, most of them are player issues. Okay, 3 of the penalties, 3 of the 10 were holding. Okay, when does holding happen? Oh, when the offensive line can't block whoever's in front of them. One of them was an illegal use of the hands on Quentin Nelson, where he, got beat, tried to recover, and pushed the guy in front of his helmet off. Once again, that is an offensive line issue when you can't block the guy in front of you. One was intentional grounding, because once again, the offensive line parted like the Red Sea, and our guy Anthony Richardson was just looking to not take a sack and to throw the football away. Okay? Half of the penalties on the Colts were because the offensive line couldn't block, because the offensive line was just getting their butt kicked for an hour. That is not a Shane Steichen thing. That is not an Anthony Richardson thing. That is a Chris Ballard thing. Lack of depth on the offensive line, the thing that he's supposed to be great at accumulating. It simply was not good enough on Sunday. Right? And so the pass protection was bad. They couldn't run the ball. The fact that Jonathan Taylor only touched the football 11 times is insane to me. It's just insane. He had 11 carries for 35 yards. That's not good, but he needs more touches. He should touch the ball 25 to 30 times a game. I mean, but the fact that he only got 11 carries, but more importantly, it's like if he's only averaging 3 yards a carry and Anthony Richardson's averaging 6 yards a carry, it's kind of hard to justify giving the ball to Jonathan Taylor when things are going that poorly. Here's Anthony Richardson after the game talking about the struggles that Jonathan Taylor had running the ball.
I mean, they have a great front. We know that, but I feel like as an offense, we didn't do much to get JT going. Blocking up front could have been a little better. Me, zone reads, making some better reads for JT right there, and then just blocking outside as well. Just trying to work as an offense to get that guy going. But we just gotta all just improve in that aspect.
Anthony Richardson right there talking about the struggles from Jonathan Taylor. It was bad. 11 carries for 35 yards. Come on now. The blocking has to be better. It does. He barely averaged 3 yards a carry. More importantly, though, he didn't touch the ball enough. Like, look, I feel like I talk about this every week, but Jonathan Taylor is more than capable of taking a screen pass 65 yards to the house. Okay? And here's the other thing that doesn't make sense. Sure, he struggled this week, but guess what? He struggled last week against the Jets. And it didn't matter. The Colts continued to look to run the football. That didn't happen this week. They abandoned the run too early. Jonathan Taylor has to get 25 to 30 touches a game. Simple as that. 25 to 30 touches a game. And he didn't come close to that this week. Didn't come close to it. He has got to be more involved in the offense than just 11 carries. Also, when you get in the red zone, you got to score touchdowns. You do. Like, Alec Ogletree has to catch that ball. I don't have to, like, everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about if you watch the game. Hit him right in the hands. It was a perfect throw. There's no one within 4 yards of him. And he just dropped it. Catch it, take a step, and you score. And then we all get excited. Yay. You have to score touchdowns there. Like, as soon as the Colts had to settle for those 2 field goals early in the red zone, inside the 10 at that, as soon as that happened, like, it was like, oh, yeah, they're going to lose because you have to score touchdowns against the best teams in the NFL. I don't have to go into that a ton because everyone knows and understands that. Okay, the offense, once again, was the reason why the Colts lost. 6 points. That's it. That won't cut it against anybody. They have to be better. Okay, the offense was bad. The defense, I'm not going to say that they were bad. Okay, here's Shane Steichen after the game talking about the performance of the defense.
You hold it 24. I mean, did you feel like the defense kept it winnable?
Yeah, heck yeah, they did. Shoot, they were battling their tails off. Obviously, they did some good things offensively. Credit to Detroit, but our defense to hold that team to 24 points. They've been averaging 33 a game. I thought they played well.
Exactly what Shane Steichen, right there, head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, said. Look, this is the best offense in the NFL. Best offense in the NFL, averaging 33 points per game. A team that can run it whenever they want and a team that can throw it whenever they want. The Colts only gave up 24 points. So once again, the highest scoring offense in the NFL. Like, if you expected them to pitch a shutout, if you expected them to give up, 13 points, then your expectations were just wrong. Your expectations were incorrect. Okay, honestly, if you had told me before the game, Jonathan, the Colts will fail to force a single turnover. They won't force one. What do you think the score is going to be? I'd be like, oh, the Lions are probably going to score like 40 points if the Colts don't force a single turnover. Okay, the fact that the Colts didn't force a turnover, first off, that's an issue because turnovers are it's a great way to win in the NFL. Secondly, the fact that they didn't force one and they gave up 24 points is incredibly surprising. It is. Okay? Like, when you go through the numbers, first off, the fact that Nick Cross led the Colts in tackles, that's a bit of an issue. No other way to really put it. It is. It is a bit of an issue. Like, your safety can't lead you in tackles. Like, Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed have got to be better, especially after they go on their podcast and they, talk crap about the media. It's like you can't go run your mouth and then go get beat 24-6. You can't do that. Okay? Like, it's not a good look, to say the least. And so, look, the defense I didn't think was the issue yesterday. The penalties, did they help? Of course not. We're going to get into those a bit later. But ultimately, the reason why the Colts lost is because this team just isn't very good. That's just the reality of it. Like, the Lions are simply better than the Colts are. Okay, like, if you expected for the Colts to win, then hey, you've got way more faith in this quarterback and this coaching staff than I do. Okay, like, I'm not going to sit here and pile on because the Colts lost a game that I think everyone expected for them to lose. Okay, like they just simply aren't good at football. Their quarterback is extremely up and down, okay, which is to be expected. A guy who barely played in college and is, he started 12 games in the NFL now, started and finished 9, right? So he's slowly gaining experience, but I don't expect him to go out there and outscore the Lions. But do I expect him to score a touchdown? Yeah, I do, considering the opinion of Shane Steichen, right? And it seemed like they figured things out last week against the Jets. But, what was supposed to happen happened. There's really no other way to put it. So when we come back here in 4 minutes, I've got more thoughts on this game, thoughts on Chris Ballard, and then, of course, we're going to do a little quarterback defense attorney. If I have time in the segment, I'll do it. If not, then we'll do that at the top of the hour. But when we come back here in about 4 minutes, the truth about this game and how the issue is Chris Ballard and nobody else.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week, or you had a nice weekend. Hopefully you're looking forward to Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving during an election year. Always interesting. Always interesting. Anyway, Colts Lions, that happened yesterday. Colts got crushed. And, people are going to be upset about it. And, you should be. That's what fans do. They get upset. Here's the truth. The Lions are just better than the Colts are. Across the board. Like, there is nothing that the Colts do better than the Lions. There is not a position group that the Colts have that is better than the Lions. Seriously, let's just run through it. Jared Goff is better than Anthony Richardson. The combination of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs is better than Jonathan Taylor. The Lions have better receivers than the Colts do. Their offensive line is undoubtedly better than the Colts. Okay, so on offense, they have a better quarterback. They have the better receivers. They have the better tight end. They have the better running backs. They have the better offensive line. They are better on offense across the board than the Colts are. On defense, Colts secondary is fine. Jalen Jones is a nice story. But the Lions secondary is superior to the Colts. The Lions defensive line dominated that game. Once again, pressuring Anthony Richardson on 14 of his 30 dropbacks. Sure, they didn't have a sack, but that's just because Anthony Richardson does a good job of not taking sacks anyway. And also, that's without Aiden Hutchinson, their best defensive lineman. The Lions were missing their best defensive lineman, and their defensive front is still better than the Colts. The linebackers, once again, the Lions missing their best linebacker. Yeah, their linebackers better than the Colts. They are better than the Colts everywhere in terms of personnel. Oh, also, the Lions have a better coaching staff. Let's not forget that. Dan Campbell is fantastic. Awesome head coach. Okay? Leads guys well. Guys want to play for him. Okay? That's an important thing, and he's obviously a smart guy because he played in the NFL, and he's coached for a long time. Okay? So, Dan Campbell, absolutely fantastic. Very much superior to Shane Steichen. Then you have Ben Johnson, one of, if not the best, young offensive mind in the NFL. I thought that the Colts were supposed to have that. I thought Shane Steichen was supposed to be that, but that's just not true. It's Ben Johnson, okay? And then you've got Aaron Glenn, who's an awesome defensive coordinator. The Lions' defense hasn't given up a touchdown in 10 quarters, and part of that is, of course, the players. But the Jets have awesome players, and they're terrible because their coaches aren't very good. Okay, this Lions coaching staff is arguably, and probably is, the best coaching staff in the NFL between head coach, offensive, and defensive coordinator. It is hands down the best group of three. When you just go down the list, it makes sense that the Lions crushed the Colts 24-6. Also, when we look at culture, the word that people love to throw around, but don't really know what it means. I got to be honest, I have an idea. Okay, but I think it's pretty obvious. I think even someone who's never coached or played can look at the Lions and be like, they have an awesome culture. It's like, well, Jonathan, how do you know that? First and foremost, they are tough, they are physical, and they are relentless. More importantly, though, and what I think is the sign of good culture, is that people want to be there. People want to play there. Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, turned down 2 potential head coaching positions to return and be the offensive coordinator of the Lions this year. He could have had whatever job he wanted. Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator for the Lions, turned down 2 potential head coaching positions to come back and be the defensive coordinator for the Lions. Okay, the people in the building, the players, whenever they do an interview, it's pretty clear that they like being there. The coaches, the assistants, clearly want to be there. Once again, they could have left, right? They could have gone and been head coaches somewhere. Okay, Ben Johnson could have gone and coached the Washington Commanders, who had the number 2 overall pick. He was like, nah, I'm good. Let me stay here. Okay? Honestly, that speaks to the culture that team has. Okay? The Detroit Lions are who Chris Ballard wants you to think that the Colts are. If if Chris Ballard was everything that he was, made up to be in terms of being one of the best GMs ever and all that crap, the Colts would look like the Lions. Okay, because the philosophies that the Lions have in terms of team building, they're the exact same ones as Chris Ballard. What is Chris Ballard all about? Offensive and defensive linemen, which I think is the proper way to go about it, because when you look at the best teams in the NFL, not only do they all have good quarterbacks, but they also have good offensive and defensive lines. Like, did you watch the Eagles last night? You know why they scored 37 points? Because they could run the ball whenever they wanted. You know why the Lions beat the Colts yesterday? Because on 3rd and 6 and 3rd and 8, they were able to hand the ball off and go pick it up. Seriously, like that is who Chris Ballard wants to be so badly. He so badly wants to have a dominant offensive and defensive line, and he just can't figure it out. On top of that, the Lions have weapons galore. They have playmakers on the back end of the defense. Okay? And more important, and also, like, they've hired really good coaches. And they have this awesome culture where, with the exception of, Williams, the wide receiver, no one in Detroit gets in trouble. The Lions are everything that Chris Ballard wants the Colts to be. The reality of it, though, is that Chris Ballard is not a good enough general manager to get the Colts to that point. No way around it. Now, it's Monday, and the Colts lost, and Anthony Richardson didn't play very well. So it's time for everyone's favorite segment, the best segment in, the 10 to noon time in Indianapolis. It's time for a little quarterback defense attorney. If I can find the sounder. There it is. Anthony Richardson with another not good performance and another Monday of me defending and explaining how, while he wasn't great, once again, it's not entirely his fault. I thought we saw some good things from Anthony Richardson despite, the 11 for 28 passing. Okay. First and foremost, let's get the head coach's opinion on this. What does Shane Steichen, offensive genius, think about the performance from his young starting quarterback yesterday?
How would you assess the way Anthony played today?
I thought he played well. Obviously, he took care of the football. Like you said, we were in some tough situations there with him on, 1st and 20, some 2nd and longs. Those are hard to, overcome sometimes. But I thought he battled like crazy throughout the whole game for sure.
Shane Steichen right there talking about Anthony Richardson and just his overall performance. And look, the whole he didn't turn the ball over thing, that's important. It is. Okay, especially given that he was pressured on 14 of his 30 dropbacks. Usually turnovers happen when you're facing pressure. The fact that he had the presence of mind to throw the football away on numerous occasions, to not take sacks as well, like, that's a big deal. That's a step in the right direction for him. Now, the other guys. Okay, the best part about being this defense attorney is you just get to blame other people, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to blame a lot of people right now. The offensive line, awful, horrendous, terrible. How do you allow pressure on 14 of 30 dropbacks? That's almost half. That's terrible. Ashton Doolin had an opportunity for like a 40-yard reception and an opportunity to keep running afterwards, but he couldn't keep his feet in bounds. Alec Ogletree standing at the goal line, ball thrown right at his chest. I'm going to drop this. This is middle school football now. We're just going to drop wide open passes. Kylan Granson, wide open off the line of scrimmage. I mean, wide open. Doesn't turn around until the ball's literally on him. Doesn't have time to make the catch. Okay, and then you get to the penalty side of things. He hit not one but two deep shots to Josh Downs that got called back due to holding. He completed a 21-yard pass to Kylan Granson that got called back. And he had a short completion to Josh Downs that got called back. 4 completions for 79 yards were called back due to penalties. Most of them being holding all 3 of them being holding or the illegal hands to the face on Quentin Nelson. Look, if those 4 plays stand, first off, Anthony Richardson's stat line would have looked better, right? He would have been 15 to 32, which isn't great. for 251 yards, right? He would have been kind of what we expect at this point. A lot of big plays and some misses, even though I didn't think he had that many misses. I feel like a large part of why the completion percentage is down is because of how many times he had to throw the football away because he just didn't have time in the pocket. Okay? So there's that expectation of it. But the other thing is if he completes, all those, if all those stand, like those are chunk plays that probably give the Colts an opportunity to score, and the game would have been closer. I didn't think he played bad. I thought he was fine. I thought he was average. He didn't turn the ball over. Okay? There were, once again, several plays where he was pressured and he just threw the ball away because that's what you're supposed to do. I just think that this is another week where the box score doesn't communicate the entire story. Okay? And if you want the ultimate glass half full, Anthony Richardson's going to be fine. If you want the most glass half full stat, I will give it to you. When Anthony Richardson was protected, when he had a clean pocket, okay, when there weren't people at his feet, when he didn't have, hands swatting at his face, with a clean pocket, Anthony Richardson was 9 of 14 for 139 yards. When he had time to throw the football, when he had an opportunity to step up in the pocket and deliver the ball on time and on target, which has been an issue for him, 9 of 14 for 139 yards. When he had time to throw, he was good. That's a tick under 10 yards per attempt, which is awesome, and a completion percentage of 64%. That'll play. That is a really good line. The issue, and the reason why I have a hard time just ripping him to shreds, is the offensive line was bad. The offensive line couldn't block me. Okay, so the offensive line can't protect him. There was no threat of a run game. Part of why Anthony Richardson was awesome against the Jets was because they had to account for Jonathan Taylor. The Lions didn't have to account for Jonathan Taylor. Like, Jonathan Taylor might as well have been standing on the sideline sipping a juice box. All right, and that's not his fault. That's on Shane Steichen for not giving him the football. Okay? So the Lions got to sit back, key on the pass game. This defensive line that, once again, dominated the day, got to pin their ears back and make life really hard on Anthony Richardson, which is good because if they hadn't, the way that Anthony Richardson was throwing the football with a clean pocket, like, the Colts would have had a great chance to win that game, but the offensive line didn't do their job. I'll never forget, just like you're always told the importance of having a good offensive line. And, you believe, and it's like, yeah, because like the quarterback needs time to throw and all these things. But horrendous offensive line play can derail even the best offenses. Do you remember when the Buccaneers played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl? And the Chiefs couldn't block anybody, and part of that was because they had some guys get hurt during the game, but still, they couldn't block anybody. And Patrick Mahomes went from looking like the best quarterback in the NFL to looking like a peasant trying to play quarterback. Okay? When your offensive line is that bad, when your offensive line allows pressure on just about half the snaps, you're not going to beat anybody. Like, the Colts could have put Patrick Mahomes back there. It would not have mattered. Seriously, it would not have mattered. That is how bad the offensive line was yesterday. And once again, that is not an Anthony Richardson thing. That is a Chris Ballard didn't do a good job of getting guys in front of a young quarterback to protect him. Quentin Nelson's, he wasn't very good yesterday. He was bad. He's supposed to be the reliable one on offensive line with 3 rookies starting. Okay? So it was rough. Once again, Anthony Richardson, like, he wasn't perfect by any means. I didn't think he was bad, though. I think that a lot of the issues were the other guys dropping passes, not getting feet in bounds, holding penalties that brought back big plays and all those things. And not only that, not only did Anthony Richardson, I think, look not halfway bad throwing the ball, but Anthony Richardson was the only run game that the Colts had. He had 10 carries for 61 yards. Okay, like, this felt like another week where Anthony Richardson did more things right than wrong. Once again, he wasn't perfect, but the rest of the offense did not play well. And he was asked about his performance after the game during his press conference, and he brought up the one thing that no one wants to talk about.
Yeah, how would you assess your performance today?
We lost, so it wasn't good enough. No, we just gotta get back to the drawing board. Like I said, focus on the details and just be better as a whole, not just individual.
At least he did something right. Anthony Richardson right there talking about how he performed on Sunday. At least he brought up winning. At least that matters. You don't hear anyone else bring that up. Shane Steichen did a whole 5 minutes. And he didn't bring up winning once. And, that's the reality of what Anthony Richardson said is just, it's the reality. How'd you play? Not good enough to win, so it doesn't really matter. Because he's exactly right. Like, look, if he was 11-28 and the Colts had won, we would all move on. We'd be like, oh, great, they won. You guys see that ball that he dropped into Alec Pierce perfectly? Yeah, that's our guy. But no, since they lost, since they only scored 6 points, which once again isn't enough, we're all gonna pile on him. And look, that's the reality of the NFL. That's the way that all this works. And hopefully they can turn it around. And look, they're going to have an opportunity to turn it around because this schedule to end. I mean, it's just it's easy. Like there are a lot of winnable games in here for the Colts, right? They get, they're going to New England this next Sunday. That game is incredibly winnable. The Patriots aren't very good, even though Drake May is more than capable of going crazy. And then they're at Denver, right? They have a bye week, and then they're at Denver. Hallelujah. Finally a bye week. And, Denver's good. Bo Nix has really figured it out. He's probably leading the Rookie of the Year race or the offensive Rookie of the Year race right now. So that game will be tough, but they get the Titans at home. They showed some life, but this is a game that the Colts should win. They then play the New York Giants, who reportedly fired their head coach and GM. Don't know if that happened or not. Didn't know the source who reported it, but there were a lot of likes and stuff on it, so maybe it's true. I don't know. And then they close the year out with the Jacksonville Jaguars at home, who feel like they've quit, right? So plenty of time to turn it around. Being 5-7, they have to win out. It's just kind of where it's at. If they do, then they'll be in because they have the tiebreaker over the Dolphins and the Broncos if that happens. So Colts got to find a way to get it done down the stretch. When we come back here in about 4.5 minutes, Indiana loses. Pacers played last night. I may touch on that just a little bit. All that coming your way here in about 4.5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Indiana lost on Saturday. Colts lose yesterday, which is not surprising. Okay, like Indiana wasn't supposed to beat Ohio State. And there's no way that the Colts were ever going to beat the Detroit Lions. It just wasn't going to happen. Like, come on now. Like, the Lions are just simply way better than the Colts are. But I want to talk about Indiana because they kind of fell in a similar boat, right? Like, Ohio State, clearly better than Indiana. Zach Gray wants to come back on. Probably going to have him on tomorrow to talk about that game. Let him parade around a little bit because, you know, he was right. You know, he said that game wouldn't be close. And it wasn't, right? Indiana torched by Ohio State on Saturday. I mean, not close, right? The game started well. Indiana comes out. They force a 3-and-out, right? Then they march the ball down the field for a touchdown. They go up 7-0. Not going to lie to you. Felt good. Had some hope. It's like, that's a good first drive, right? A little 3-and-out action. Watch out now. Let's go. You know, at that point, I really wanted to text every Ohio State fan in my life with just like the eyeball emoji, you know, of just like, hey, watch out now. This game, we might get you. You know, there was some hope in that moment, right? You're up 7-0. Then the Buckeyes went on a 38-8 run to end the game for the rest of the game. I mean, a game was not close. Okay. Now, despite, you know, Indiana losing by 23, I thought that they did some good things. You know, they held Quinshon Judkins to only 2.6 yards per carry. Aside from the 39-yard run by Travion Henderson, he was held in check as well. Like, outside of that run, he only averaged 3.5 yards a carry. I mean, so like I said, Indiana's front seven was fine. Like, they held up really well, which isn't surprising because if you've seen Indiana play this year, then you know that front seven is really good. The other thing that we have to understand, and the reason why Indiana lost, the talent on the edge. Like, Ohio State's receivers were so much better than Indiana's corners. Like, that was the issue for Indiana on defense. Like, I really like the Pons kid, right? He's 5'9". He's my size. And he plays hard and he's physical and he's always in the right spot, but he just doesn't have the size to guard a guy like Jeremiah Smith. Like, he just doesn't. And Ohio State won that game because they had NFL talent at wide receiver, and Indiana does not have NFL talent in the secondary. Will Howard was 14 of 14 to start, and he finished 22 of 26. Indiana had no answer for the NFL talent at wide receiver that the Buckeyes have. They didn't. Like, whenever Ohio State wanted to throw the football, they could. That's why they had a 3rd and 35 and winded up with a first down 2 plays later, right? 25-yard completion, 12-yard completion, first down, let's go score. Okay, they threw the ball whenever they wanted because Indiana simply just didn't have the talent on the outside. Ohio State was superior out on the edge. That's why they scored 38 points. Defensively, Indiana couldn't pick up a blitz. Okay, that first drive, Ohio State comes out. They're like, maybe we can get pressure with 4. And they couldn't. Right? You know, the Indiana offensive line held up. And then Ohio State was like, okay, we're going to blitz the rest of the game. Good luck. And Indiana simply couldn't block the blitz, right? Guys were missing assignments. Running backs were blocking the wrong side of the line. Offensive linemen are getting ran over. And that was the game. Curtis Rourke was only sacked 5 times. Felt like a lot more than that. All right, Ohio State just consistently got pressure in his face on every passing down after that first drive. That's really where Indiana wasn't good enough. 3rd and got to throw it on either side of the ball wasn't good enough for Indiana. If it was 3rd and long, they were not going to convert that. They were not picking up that first down simply because they couldn't block the blitz, right? And then defensively, if Ohio State was 3rd and long, it's like, okay, which one of these receivers are we going to throw it to? Because you can't guard all of them. So that was the issue, right? Thankfully for Indiana, despite the drubbing that they suffered on Saturday, they still deserve a spot in the college football playoff. There's no way around it. Okay, and it's not because Alabama lost, and it's not because Ole Miss lost, and it's not because Texas A&M lost. Like the fact that that the AP poll has Indiana ranked 10th is insane to me. It really is. Like they're 10-1 with their worst loss to Ohio State. Okay, SMU's 10-1 with their worst loss to 19th ranked BYU. Miami's 10-1 with their loss to unranked Georgia Tech. Okay, Tennessee's 9-2 with losses to Arkansas and Georgia. Georgia, good loss, obviously. But Arkansas, come on now. I'm an Arkansas fan. I know they aren't very good. Okay, the fact that Georgia, actually not. Georgia's got two good losses. I don't mind Georgia. But Notre Dame being ranked 5th, the loss to Northern Illinois, come on now. That's just ridiculous to me. Okay, Indiana undoubtedly deserves a spot in the playoff. They do. Because when you look at the history of the playoff and you look at the games and the scores, none of them are close. Every game looks like what happened to Indiana on Saturday. Okay? Just look at the history of the games. Okay? Yes, Indiana is nowhere near as good as Ohio State, which is not surprising at all. Okay? They lost. Yes, they lost by 23. Yes, it wasn't close. But Indiana's not better than the favorite to win the national title. So what? A lot of teams aren't. Okay? Like, let's just be honest. What's the list of teams that would go into Columbus this year and not get stomped like that? Oregon? I think Texas? Don't know. I think. And Georgia. That is it. Every other team in the country, Ole Miss, Penn State, whoever, Notre Dame, if they went into Columbus, that game would not be pretty at all. Okay? Let's take a little trip down memory lane. Let's look at the previous college football playoff games. There have been 30 college football playoff games played, right? All between the 4 best teams in the country. Okay? Those games haven't been close. Those games look like what we saw in Columbus. Okay, the winners have outscored the losers 1,192 points to 634. That is a point differential of 558. Okay, the average margin of victory in college football playoff games, all 30, is 18.6. It's a 3-possession game on average. Isn't that what we just saw in Columbus? A 3-possession game. Okay, and these are between, once again, the 4 best teams in the country. Okay, most of them are not close. Okay, only 9 of the college football playoff games that have been played have been decided by 1 possession. That is less than a third. Less than a third of the college football playoff games. Once again, games between the 4 best teams in the country have been decided by 1 possession. Less than a third. Meanwhile, 18 of these games have been decided by 3 possessions or more. That's over half of them. Over half of the games throughout the history of the college football playoff looked like what we saw on Saturday at a neutral site, by the way, not on the road in someone else's house. Okay, most of these college football playoff games are absolute blowouts because that is the reality of the sport. That is the reality of college football. Okay, the best team in the country and usually the second best team in the country stand head and shoulders above everybody else. Head and shoulders above everybody else. Like, you guys remember peak Alabama and Nick Saban? You remember when they beat Michigan State like 38-0? And then the next year, I think Ohio State beat Notre Dame like 31-0 or whatever it was. The games are never close between the 4 best teams in the country. And look, is Indiana one of the 4 best teams in the country? No, they're not. But are they the 8th? Probably. 9th? I don't know. Maybe. Come on now. Like they clearly deserve a spot just based off the history of the game. There shouldn't be a doubt. Like, the rankings are going to come out tomorrow night, and if I had to guess, the committee's going to put them on the outside looking in. They shouldn't, but if I had to guess, that's probably what they're going to do. But I don't know. I don't think that there should be any question about it. Indiana deserves a spot in the college football playoff because every college football playoff game, not everyone, most of the college football playoff games have looked like what we saw Saturday in Columbus, a straight up mismatch. Now, thankfully, teams like Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas A&M lost. So Indiana should, you would think, wind up where they belong. That's, in, the top 12. As I said earlier, the college football playoff rankings, they have them at 10th, or the AP poll, excuse me. The AP poll has them 10th. And I don't know. I find that kind of hard to believe. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. There's so many watered down schedules. How do you really know? Okay. But the reality of the day of the game is when it comes to college football, most games are blowouts. That's why Indiana has a 30-point, differential in scoring for most of the games that they've played. They deserve a spot. No way around it. Now, I've been really negative today. I don't want to be negative anymore. It's all doom and gloom. Colts suck. The Hoosiers got blown out. Frustrating. So I like to talk about something a little bit more exciting. No one cares, but the Pacers won last night. They beat the Wizards. Haliburton had a great game. Not a great game. He had a good game, 21 points, 9 assists. Most importantly, he was 5 of 11 from 3. It's the most important thing for him. Okay, because the shooting is what has been an issue for him this year, not the playmaking. Like, he has to shoot the basketball well for the Colts, for the Pacers to win games. Okay, and that's where he struggled the most, right? Like, most of the time, great playmakers like Haliburton are going to continue to get guys shots. Okay, like Chris Paul, like he's always going to get other guys shots. That's just the way that it is, right? And so for the Pacers, our guy Tyrese Haliburton has got to shoot the ball well, because if he doesn't, then the Pacers aren't going to win very many games. And he finally had a good shooting game for the first time in forever. Here's Rick Carlisle on why Tyrese Haliburton played so well.
I thought in the second half, he really picked up his defense, and that really ignited his offense. And in the first half, he took some shots that were difficult shots, and they're just hard shots to make. Second half, he did a much better job of engineering, the right plays for himself and teammates. And really, the play of the night was when he pitches it to Pascal, gets it back, and it goes pass, and then he ends up with it, and he hits Pascal for a wide open 3, which really was the key play that kind of put the game away. So, this is a tough stretch. I mean, we're without some of our, key players for how we play. And so everybody's got to pick up their game, and particularly the best players. So he and Pascal really picked it up tonight. Miles was great in the second half defensively, and that's what it took.
Rick Carlisle right there talking about Tyrese Haliburton finally playing well, finally shooting the basketball well. I love that he brought up his defense, because he's been pretty solid on that side of the ball so far this year. He had a couple steals. Like, he's been paying attention. He's not giving up easy layups and things like that. But more importantly, like, he made shots finally. And that has to keep happening if the Pacers want to turn things around, because they're getting good production from the other guys. Like Mathurin, he's made a quote-unquote leap. I don't know if he's made a leap, but he's gotten better, right, from last year to this year. Miles Turner, he's having a good year. Our guy, Pascal Siakam, who's come over in the trade, he's having a good year, right? Like, he's leading the Pacers in scoring. Miles Turner's averaging 16 points a game. Like they're getting production from these other guys. Miles Turner shooting 43% from 3. Like, by golly. Like, the other guys, the second, third, and fourth best players for the Pacers are showing up and playing well, right? Pascal Siakam's shooting lights out right now, 46% from 3. Mathurin and Turner are both at 43%, and they're both scoring the basketball. And obviously so is Siakam. The thing that has to show up and come along is the defense as a team. And Tyrese Haliburton, he's got to start scoring the basketball. Like, that has to happen. Okay, Obi Toppin also having a really good year. It's pretty quiet because the Pacers haven't been very good. But, like, he is, doing good things for them as well. So, Pacers, if our guy, Haliburton can just start to shoot the ball a little bit better, they're going to be fine. Okay, Jarris Walker also, by the way, shooting 41% from 3 on the year. Just saying. Anyway, yeah, when we come back here in a few minutes, we're going to talk a little bit of Colts because I don't really want to talk about the Colts. I don't. Like, they're so bad that no one should talk about them, but we're here. We're in Indianapolis, and so we kind of have to because people want to know about the Colts. So when we come back, Colts got crushed. It's frustrating. It felt like the Colts had figured some things out, and now it's pretty clear that they haven't. My thoughts on their loss yesterday when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Kind of the stop and start and the penalties, how did that really restrict you as an offense today?
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. If you did, it probably means you didn't watch the Colts play because they were awful. Just awful, man. They're bad. They lose. The game didn't feel close. It wasn't close. They lose 24-6. Got just absolutely crushed. Looked awful while doing so. I mean, they just did so many things wrong. No other way to put it. Anthony Richardson wasn't good. Outside of a couple, slant routes to Josh Downs, every throw that Anthony Richardson made was down the field, which is problematic. I thought that we learned against the Jets that it's important to give him some easy completions. I guess we didn't learn that. I don't know. 11 of Anthony Richardson's 28 passes came less than 10 yards down the field. That means that 17 of the balls that he threw were further than 10 yards down the field. His passing spread cannot look like that. It can't. That's not sustainable for anybody. If all you're doing is dropping back and throwing the ball intermediate to deep, like you have to mix in the short stuff. Like you have to. Like that is part of why the offense was so good and so crisp against the Jets. They mixed in easy completions, and it worked well. Okay, of the 11 passes that Anthony Richardson attempted that were 10 yards down the field or less, he completed 7 of them. That's 7 of 11. That is a 64% completion percentage. On his throws further than 10 yards down the field, he was 4 of 17, which is terrible. And I know that some plays got called back, and his numbers would have looked better if they hadn't gotten called back and all that kind of stuff. I don't care. That's not the point of that bit. The whole point is that you've got to give him more easy throws. They didn't run a screen the entire game. Okay, the Colts have got to give him more easy throws. They've got to get the ball out of his hands quickly, especially when the Lions are getting after him the way that they were. Anthony Richardson was pressured on 14 of his 30 dropbacks. That is 46%. Okay, it's hard for any quarterback in the NFL to find success when you're under pressure that often. Okay, and it's even harder to find success when you're consistently under pressure and your offense is trying to throw the football 15 yards down the field, right? Because it takes guys a few seconds to get down the field. And by the time that they're coming out of their routes, you're already running for your life. Come on now. Like, this is what seems like should be pretty basic stuff. And you think that guys calling plays in the NFL would understand this. Okay, like you've got to find a way to get the ball out of Anthony Richardson's hands faster if you're Shane Steichen. Okay, because the Lions, defensive line just dominated the Colts. Wasn't close. They owned that game. Okay, and it was obvious that was going to happen before the game even started. Like if you're Shane Steichen and Jim Bob Cooter, how do you not take a step back and say, you know what we're going to do? Because we have to. We're going to start 3 rookies on the offensive line. How do you not look at that and say, they're probably going to struggle a little bit given how good this defensive front is from the Lions. We should probably get rid of the ball fast. Nah, they're like, we'll be fine. Let's throw it down the field a lot. Hey, Alec Pierce, go long. Like, come on. They should have looked to get the ball out of Anthony Richardson's hands quicker than they did, and they didn't. Also, really quickly, to somewhat defend Shane Steichen, people are going to make a big deal out of the penalties. They're going to be like, 10 penalties, 10 penalties. I didn't think that the penalties were like discipline issues. I don't think that the penalties were because of coaching. The penalties happened because this Colts offensive line's not good. 3 of the 10 penalties were holding calls on the offensive line. Okay, that is an offensive line talent issue. One of them was an illegal use of the hands on Quentin Nelson because he got beat and he went to recover and he ended up ripping a guy's helmet off. That is an offensive line issue. One was intentional grounding, which happened because the offensive line didn't block a soul and Anthony Richardson was under pressure and he didn't want to take a sack. So he threw it away and they flagged him for intentional grounding. Half of the penalties happened because the offensive line got their butts kicked. Come on now. The offensive line has to be better, and that is a Chris Ballard issue, not a Shane Steichen or Anthony Richardson issue. Chris Ballard has to do a better job of doing the thing that he's supposed to be good at, and that's drafting offensive linemen. Okay, because not only was the pass protection abysmal, the run game wasn't good either. Jonathan Taylor, first off, he only touched the football 11 times. That's not enough. He had 11 carries for 35 yards. That's not good. That's like barely 3 yards a carry. Here's Anthony Richardson after the game talking about the struggles that Jonathan Taylor had running the football and what needs to be fixed.
I mean, they have a great front. We know that, but I feel like as an offense, we didn't do much to get JT going. Blocking up front could have been a little better. Me, zone reads, making some better reads for JT right there, and then just blocking outside as well. Just trying to work as an offense to get that guy going. But we just gotta all just improve in that aspect.
Anthony Richardson talking about why the run game was as bad as it was. I mean, just absolutely terrible. Awful, awful, awful. So the blocking has to be better, as Anthony Richardson said. He's got to make better reads on the zone read. I think that's just him trying to fall on the sword, even though he didn't. But either way, Jonathan Taylor didn't touch the ball enough. 11 carries, no receptions, no screen passes, nothing designed to get him out in space. Nothing like that. I mean, come on now. Like, I get it. He struggled. 3 yards to carry, whatever. He averaged like 2.5 yards to carry against the Jets. And the Colts didn't stray from the run game. They stayed committed. They continued to run the football. Okay? And it helped. It helped. Because the Jets actually had to worry about him. Right? And the Lions didn't have to worry about him at all this week. Okay? The Colts simply gave up on the run way too early. The Colts were like, you know what? Let's not give the ball to the best player on our offense. Jonathan Taylor should have 25 to 30 touches a game. No way around it. I don't care if they come through him catching swing passes. I don't care if they come through him, catching the ball on a screen. I don't care if they come from him setting up out wide and running like a drag route or something. I don't care how they happen. I don't care if it comes off of the Colts handing him the football, whatever it is. He has got to touch the ball more. Also, when you get in the red zone, you got to score touchdowns. Okay, when the Colts settled for those 2 field goals in the red zone early, it's like, oh, this game's toast. No way they're winning if they can't get the ball into the end zone when you're less than 10 yards out. Okay, like you've got to score touchdowns there. Okay, the offense was not good. Okay, Anthony Richardson wasn't good. Okay, I thought he was fine. We're going to do quarterback, defense attorney probably here at some point, but it was pretty obvious that this game wasn't going to be close, and it shouldn't have been. The Lions are just better than the Colts are. No way around it. If you want a positive, I'll give it to you. The defense, not that bad. I thought that the Colts defense, given the offense that they were playing against, held their own. They only gave up 24 points. Here's Shane Steichen after the game talking about the performance that the Colts defense had. That the Colts defense had.
You hold it 24. I mean, did you feel like the defense kept it winnable?
Yeah, heck yeah, they did. Shoot, they were battling their tails off. Obviously, they did some good things offensively. Credit to Detroit, but our defense to hold that team to 24 points. They've been averaging 33 a game. I thought they played well.
Shane Steichen right there talking about the Colts defense holding the Lions to only 24 points. I mean, look, when you're playing against the highest scoring offense in the NFL and you hold them to 10 points under their average, that's a good thing. Okay. And I really don't have that many complaints. Like, this defense was who they've been. We're going to give up a bunch of third downs and all that kind of stuff. But when we get into the red zone, we're going to, puff our chest out and be a little bit better. And they were, right? You only give up, once again, 24 points to an offense averaging 33 points a game. Like, that's a good outing from your defense. Like, if you expected for the Colts defense to give up 20 points or less, then your expectations were wrong. I'm sorry. Like, they just were. Like there was never a world, given the talent differential between the Lions and the Colts, that the Colts were going to not give up less than 20 points. Okay. The fact that they held them to 24, like, that is the recipe to beat the Lions. Okay. Hold them to 21 to 24-ish points and hope your offense can score 27 against a good defense. Okay. Also, surprising thing here. The Colts held them to 24 points despite forcing a turnover. Okay, usually when the Colts have good defensive performances, right, or when they hold an opponent to less than however many points they usually score, it's usually because they have a couple interceptions, they force a fumble and they get on it, whatever it is. Like the fact that they didn't force a turnover and they still only gave up 24 is incredibly surprising. But I mean, look, they weren't perfect. They had some issues as well. Like they couldn't stop the run. I mean, the 3rd and 6 and 3rd and 8 run plays from the Lions to pick up first downs are they replay in my mind because that should just never happen. It's 3rd and 8 and you let them run for a first down. Like I get it if Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jamison Williams or one of these guys gets open. Like, okay, that happens, right? This is one of the best offenses in the NFL. Jared Goff's played really well this year, all those things. But 3rd and 8, you let them line it up and run the football right over you for a first down. I don't know how you let that happen. I mean, you got to be better there. They had the 4th down stop. That was big. When that happened, I was like, oh, Colts have a little bit of life here, right? It was 14-6, and you're like, oh, if the Colts can go score, then, they got some momentum and they'll be fine. And then they didn't score. But that was really kind of the issue, right? Like, the issue wasn't the Colts defense. The issue was the Colts offense. And it's just another week of, Shane Steichen not delivering. Okay? Like, I still just can't believe. Like, look, I didn't expect the Colts offense to be as good this week as it was last week because, last week was Anthony Richardson's best game as a pro. They're playing a poorly coached Jets defense. So I didn't expect them to look as good as they did last week, but I did expect for them to score 6 points, to score more than 6 points. I expected for them to have figured out some things like, I don't know, give Jonathan Taylor the football a lot. I don't know, give Anthony Richardson more easy completions. That way you're not in 3rd and 8. Instead, you're in 3rd and 3. And they didn't do either one of those two things. I mean, they have to be better than that. Like the offense has to be better. Obviously, you can't score 6 points and expect to win games in the NFL. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, more thoughts on Lions and Colts because, look, everyone's going to complain today about Anthony Richardson, 11 of 28. We're going to complain about Shane Steichen and play calling like I just did. We're going to complain about all those things, and rightfully so. But the reason why the Colts lost yesterday wasn't obviously it was in part because of those guys. But the main reason is Chris Ballard. This team just isn't very good. There isn't much talent. Like there is talent, obviously. These guys are in the NFL, but the Lions are better than the Colts at every single position. There is not a position on the field or a position group on the field that the Colts are better than the Lions at. And I'm going to tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Choosing the right candidates for any office can be difficult.
My office has lots of drama.
I share my office. But no matter what kind of office you have, if you're hiring, you need ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. Hopefully your Thanksgiving plans are lined up. Hopefully you're excited for them and all of those good things. Let's talk more about the Indianapolis Colts and how pathetic that football team is. Let's do that. Look, the truth of this Lions and Colts game, first off, no one should be surprised by this result. Chances are you aren't. You're just a little frustrated at everything that happened. Because the truth of the matter is really simple. The Lions are better than the Colts. Shocker. But it's not even just that they're better than the Colts overall. They're better than the Colts at every single position group. They are. They are better than every single position group. Jared Goff, let's work through it. Jared Goff is better than Anthony Richardson by a lot at the quarterback spot. Jared Goff should be mentioned in MVP stuff. We'll see if he is or not. Saw Saquon Barkley getting some play for it this morning. Saw some stuff on Josh Allen should be the MVP. Seen a bunch of different stuff, but Jared Goff should be in that conversation, and he's way better than Anthony Richardson. The combination of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs is better than Jonathan Taylor. Okay, if you want to tell me Jonathan Taylor individually is better than both of them, okay, fine. But the 1-2 punch of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs is better than just Jonathan Taylor by himself. Okay, there is no doubt about that. The Lions have better receivers than the Colts do. Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, better than Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs. They just are, okay? I don't think that I have to defend that statement at all. The Lions have arguably the best offensive line in the NFL. It's them or the Eagles. They're 1-2. Okay? They dominated the Colts up front. They ran the football whenever they wanted to. Okay? Like that offensive line it's mean and it's physical and it's nasty and they are tough. Okay, so the Lions have a better offensive line than the Colts. The Lions have better receivers than the Colts. The Lions have better running backs than the Colts, and the Lions have a better quarterback than the Colts. Probably means that the Lions are just a little bit better. And then on defense, sure, the Colts secondary is fine. Jalen Jones, nice story. All right, Kenny Moore, undrafted free agent. Nice story. Has had a good career. Samuel Womack off waivers has been solid this year. But come on now. Nick Cross has been better this year. Saw Julian Blackmon make a play on Sunday. It's the first time all year. It only took him, 12 weeks to make it happen. But this Lions secondary is no joke. It's way better than the Colts between Joseph and Terrion Arnold. He didn't play on Sunday, but he usually does. He's a good rookie corner. So their secondary is better than the Colts. The Lions defensive line dominated that game. I hit on that 10 minutes ago. Even with Aiden Hutchinson out, their defensive line is better than the Colts. Arguably the best pass rusher in the NFL, a guy who was pacing to have an absolute career season. Yeah, even with that guy out, the Lions defensive line is better than the Colts. Okay, their linebackers, solid as well. Once again, their best linebacker was out, and their linebackers were still better than E.J. Speed and Zaire Franklin. But hey, they don't podcast like Zaire Franklin and E.J. Speed. They got that covered. So the Lions have better players across the board. It's not even a question. In terms of coaching, though, Dan Campbell is fantastic. Better coach than Shane Steichen. I don't think anyone would argue that. And the thing that Shane Steichen's supposed to be great at, play calling, offensive genius, all those things, right? He's supposed to be that. But the Lions have the better version of that. And Ben Johnson, it's one of the best young offensive minds in the NFL. Aaron Glenn, fantastic defensive coordinator, one of the best in the NFL. They haven't given up a touchdown in the last 10 quarters that they've played, okay? Like that team is awesome. Those coaches are that is probably the best trio of coaches in the NFL. Okay? Maybe it's the Eagles between Sirianni and Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore. Maybe it's them. I don't know. I would once again argue for the Lions. Okay. And then when you look at the culture, the word that everyone really likes to throw around, but no one really knows what it means. When you look at the culture of the Lions, it's better than the Colts. The Colts have podcasters and guys gambling and Grover Stewart getting suspended for PEDs last year and a lot of issues. Quarterbacks getting benched and then starting again, like just so many issues. And then you look at the Lions. Tough, physical, relentless. Players don't get in trouble outside of Jamison Williams, who got suspended for 2 games. They got suspended a lot of last year. Outside of that, no one gets in trouble for the Lions. Okay? But I think that the biggest thing that speaks to the culture that the Lions have built is that guys want to be there. Players want to play there and coaches want to coach there. So, well, Jonathan, how do you know that? Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, hot name last year in the head coaching search cycle. He turned down not one, but 2 potential head coaching jobs. One of them with the Washington Commanders, who had the number 2 overall pick. He's like, nah, I'm good. I'll stay here. I'll coach alongside Dan Campbell. I'll coach Jared Goff. We're good. Like, I'll stay here. I don't want those jobs. I'm good. That's crazy. It's very rare that you find guys that are assistants that pass on head coaching jobs. Okay. Aaron Glenn, that's another guy who turned down 2 potential head coaching jobs to come back and be a coordinator for the Lions. Okay. When you have assistants turning down head coaching jobs to stay, like that speaks volumes because that usually does not happen. Okay. The people in the building, the players, they want to be there. And it all starts up top. You're not going to find anyone who doesn't like Dan Campbell, which I think is, awesome. And it's not at all surprising. And that's just not a common thing. Like, I don't know, maybe I watch and pay attention to the NBA too much, but it seems like everyone wants out as soon as they have an opportunity to leave. And when you have, once again, coaches that are giving up opportunities to go be head coaches other places, just to come back, like that's just uncommon. And it speaks to the culture that the Lions have. And the Lions are exactly who Chris Ballard wants you to think that the Colts are. Like, if Chris Ballard was the general manager that everyone says that he is, the Colts would look like the Lions. Because it seems like the philosophies are the same. When you look at the Lions, what do they have? The best offensive line in the NFL and one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. Okay, it was arguably the best defensive line in the NFL before Aiden Hutchinson got hurt. Okay, they have weapons galore, a ton of speed like Jamison Williams, really fast. Amon-Ra St. Brown, really fast. Okay, the receiver Robinson, I think, who got hurt, guess what? He's also really fast. They have 2 awesome running backs, okay? Playmakers galore, dominant in the trenches, okay? Not only do the Lions have all those things, but they've got playmakers on the back end of their defense, and they have a good quarterback. Like, the Lions are who Chris Ballard wants the Colts to be. He's just not good enough of a general manager. He's not a good enough drafter. He's not a good enough of a free agent signer. I guess that's how you say that. He's not good enough at signing free agents to make that happen. He's not good enough at making trades to make that happen. Oh, also, the Lions have the thing that Shane Steichen was supposed to be, a fantastic offensive mind. The Lions are everything that Chris Ballard wants the Colts to be. He's just not a good enough general manager to make the Colts the Lions. And that is why the Colts lost the way that they did to the Lions on Sunday. Now, the quarterback thing is interesting for the Colts, right? People are upset with Anthony Richardson. 11 of 28. It's really bad. It's really bad. But I didn't think he was that bad. I thought he was pretty average. I thought that the Colts had bigger issues than him on Sunday. And here's Shane Steichen after the game talking about his young quarterback's performance.
How would you assess the way Anthony played today?
I thought he played well. Obviously, took care of the football. Like you said, we were in some tough situations there with him on, 1st and 20, some 2nd and longs. Those are hard to, overcome sometimes. But I thought he battled like crazy throughout the whole game for sure.
Shane Steichen right there talking about his young quarterback battling and working hard. The whole no turnovers thing is usually an annoying thing for me, but I actually think that Shane Steichen bringing it up here is a good point because he was under duress the entire game. He was. I think that's why his completion percentage was so bad. And you say, well, Jonathan, what do you mean? He was under pressure and he threw that ball away numerous times. Okay, the offensive line was bad. Like, this is just another game where the guys around Anthony Richardson did not help him. Okay, was he great? No, he was not. But could he have gotten some help from his teammates? Undoubtedly. The offensive line was bad. Ashton Doolin couldn't keep his feet in bounds on a bomb. Alec Ogletree dropped a touchdown pass. Kylan Granson didn't turn around when he was wide open. He completed 2 deep shots to Josh Downs that got called back. He completed a 21-yard pass to Kylan Granson that got called back. He had another completion to Josh Downs that got called back. 4 completions for 79 yards were called back due to penalties. Look, if those four plays stand, like, the Colts, first off, would have had a better chance to win because 3 of those plays that got called back were big plays down the field. And Anthony Richardson's final stat line would have been 15-32, which isn't great. Like, don't get me wrong. 15-32 for 251 yards. Not great, but it's what we expect from Anthony Richardson. Big plays and quarterback run game. He delivered on the quarterback run game, but we'll get to that more here in a second, right? A lot of big plays. I didn't feel like he missed that often. I really don't. I feel like a lot of his incompletions were him just throwing the football away. Okay? Like, he played averagely. Like, he was fine. The Colts have bigger issues on this roster aside from him. Okay? There were several plays where I thought he was pressured and he made the right decision of throwing the football away. I just think this is another week where if you just sit back and you look at the box score, it doesn't tell the full story. Okay? The biggest thing to look at, though, for the Colts and Anthony Richardson, if you want the most positive outlook on Anthony Richardson, okay, this is the stat that you want to look at. When Anthony Richardson had a clean pocket, he was 9 of 14 for 139 yards. When he had time to sit in the pocket, survey the field, and throw the football, he was good. Okay? That's almost 10 yards per attempt, that's a great number, and a completion percentage of 64%. That is, like, that'll play. That is a fantastic line. The issue was he didn't have a clean pocket. And look, yes, there are times where, look, you're not going to have a clean pocket every time that you drop back to throw the football. I'm not ignorant to that. But I will say that, once again, when you're pressured on half of your dropbacks, you're going to have a rough time. The offensive line couldn't block me yesterday. I'm convinced. And there was no threat of the run game. Okay, part of why Anthony Richardson was so good against the Jets was because they had to account for Jonathan Taylor. Okay, the Lions didn't have to worry about Jonathan Taylor. Okay, they got to key on the pass game. This defensive line that, once again, dominated the game for the Lions, got to pin their ears back and just go after Anthony Richardson. And he's back there running for his life. Okay, the fact that he didn't take a sack is surprising, right? So, yes, was Anthony Richardson's completion percentage bad? Yes. But also, his teammates didn't play well either. And football, it's the ultimate team game, as they say. Like, everyone has to play well if you want to win games. And this offensive line for the Colts wasn't good. The play calling, I didn't think was quarterback friendly. And they didn't give Jonathan Taylor the football enough. All 3 of those things are outside of Anthony Richardson's control. Simple as that. Okay? Another thing that he did well that is going to continue to be important for the Colts going forward is, he ran the ball well. Like, the only version of a run game that the Colts had was Anthony Richardson. 10 carries for 61 yards. By the way, Jonathan Taylor, 11 carries for 35 yards. Why your running back is only getting 1 more carry than your quarterback doesn't make much sense to me, but that's what the Colts decided to do. Okay? Once again, this just feels like another week where Anthony Richardson did a lot of things right, but the rest of his team couldn't figure it out. And, that's just, that kind of feels like the story of the season. This roster around Anthony Richardson is not very good. Simple as that. This offensive line, while, 4 years ago was really good, they've gotten older and they just aren't as good as they used to be. And guys are getting hurt. And, it's very problematic. And for the Colts, When you're starting 3 rookie offensive linemen, you've got to find a way to still get the ball moving. And I think the easiest way to do that is throw the ball quickly. But, the Colts are like, you know what we don't want to do? Throw the ball quickly. So, yeah, Colts just not a very good team. Simple as that. But there's a little bit of hope, right? Saying that they're bad probably isn't right. They've won 5 games. They're not the Jags. Like, the Jags are bad. The Colts are average at best. I think that's the best way to say it. They've got a path to the playoffs. They've got to win out. That's kind of the big thing here. Like, if they don't win out, then it's, they don't win out, then they're not going to make it. So they've got 5 games left. They play the Patriots on Sunday, and then they have their bye week in week 14, which is just a brutal week to have a bye week. So Patriots on Sunday on the road, that is the game that they should win. Will they win? I don't know, because who knows what Anthony Richardson's going to do. But they're at the Patriots on Sunday. That's a game that they should win. They should win that game. We'll see. And then you've got the Broncos, week 15, coming off the bye week. They're on the road at Denver. This is a game that is going to be tough because the Broncos are good. Bo Nix has figured a lot of things out. He's been playing really well here as of late. So we'll see what he does. We'll see what he looks like. And kind of that's the one tough game that the Colts have. And then they finish it off playing the Titans at home. That's a game that they should win because the Titans aren't very good. Okay. And apparently neither are the Houston Texans, but we'll see. And then they play at the Giants, who are awful. They're awful. That is potentially the worst team in the NFL. And then they close it out playing against the Jags at home. And look, I saw someone comment, sorry, I missed your name, that there's no way this team's winning 5 games in a row. Probably not, right? Like, the consistency hasn't been there from Anthony Richardson. The consistency hasn't been there from the defense. This team has just been really up and down. But with that being said, like, when you look at what we thought was going to be an easier stretch earlier in the year, they did go 4-1. Okay, that when they played the Bears at home, they won that game, 21-16. That was a game that I think we all looked at and said the Colts should win that game. When they played the Steelers at home against Justin Fields, we looked at that game and we said that is a game that the Colts should win, and they did. And then they went to the Jags and they lost, but they never win down there. So, I don't know if the Colts are really supposed to win that game or not. And then we looked at the game at the Titans and we were like, you know what? The Colts should probably win that game. And they did. And then we looked at the game here at home against the Dolphins and we're like, no Tua, the Colts should probably win that game. And they did. Okay, so early in the year when they had a 5-game stretch of games that they should win, they went 4-1, and the one loss was in a place where they never seemed to win. Okay, and here we are again, end of the year, a 5-game stretch where 4 of them feel like games that they should definitely win, and then they've got one tough one on the road at Denver against a young rookie quarterback. We'll see. Do I think it'll happen? Probably not. But can it happen? Undoubtedly, because like I said, these teams that they're playing to close the season, except for the Broncos, are not good. Thanks for tuning in to The Real Jonathan Smith Show. I appreciate it. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to 1. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes.